This is the Lessons in Positivity videocast. Here's your host, Scott Peterson.
Welcome back to another episode of Lessons in Positivity. 2020 has been an important year in terms of discussions about racism and social justice. This week's guest has a unique perspective on these topics as she was the first African-American female swimmer to make the USA Olympic swim team, as well as the first to earn an Olympic medal. Her journey to standing on the medal platform is eye-opening and important for all coaches and young athletes to hear. We're extremely honored to have Maritza McClendon on this week's show, and we hope you enjoy this interview. Well, welcome to the show, Maritza McClendon, and I'm glad that our viewers get a chance to get to know Maritza, because this is one of my favorite people that I have met over the years. Just such a great, positive athlete. And first of all, Maritza, welcome to the show.
Hey, Scott. Thank you so much.
So just to kind of give a little bit of background, Maritza was an Olympian. As a matter of fact, owns the distinction of being the first Black female to make a U.S. Olympic swim team. She also was a medalist in the 2004 games in Athens and broke about 2 or 3 American records in the process. So quite an accomplished swimmer, and we have a whole bunch of things I want to get to, Maritza. But one of the first things I wanted to talk to you about was, I read an article one time when you said that when you got on the starting blocks, you would touch your toes and tell yourself, just do your best. And it might have been inspired by your father. And can you talk about that and why that was important to you?
Yeah, definitely. So for me, I definitely struggled my entire swimming career with, having that mental ability to perform every single time I popped up, like having that confidence to know that I put in all the work and the effort at practice to be at the swim meet and compete against these other swimmers. So my dad always used to tell me, at the end of your races, whether it's good or bad, make sure that you are just absolutely dead tired, like you've given all your effort. So I started kind of this routine of like, okay, I know I put the effort in at practice. I know sometimes it may or may not work out in my races, but at the same time, I want to walk up behind the block knowing that I have a positive mindset, getting ready to go on. So I used to put my cap and goggles on, bend over, touch my toes. That was like my point to like kind of focus a little bit and just say, you know what, Maritza, go out there and do your best. And, again, sometimes it was fantastic. Sometimes it wasn't, but that was okay. As long as I touched the wall and I knew in my heart that I gave it my 100% effort, 110% effort.
Yeah, I think a lot of kids think that an Olympic swimmer never has bad meets, never has had disappointments and things like that, because they kind of see the finished product and they see you on the medal stand and stuff like that. But they don't know that inside of that are those days that you're just not as good as you normally are.
Right. And I kind of always go back to this image that I've seen of like an iceberg, right? You see this tiny little peak of an iceberg, but below the surface, there's all, it's much bigger mass, right? So I kind of think about that as our career. We go through the tough times, the injuries, the great swims are definitely in there, the positive moments, the negative moments, people downing us, like all those things are all below the surface. And people tend to think, okay, well, all I see is you getting an Olympic medal and you're smiling and cheering. And, there's just so much more that's happened to get to that point is what, I always tell people. And for me, I think that the difference between an athlete moving up to becoming an elite athlete is being able to look at those moments where they weren't so great and learning from them. I go and do several speeches throughout, my entire career and just say, turn any negative situation into something positive. Everything's always a learning opportunity. So if you don't have a good race, find out what was it about that race? Was it my start? Was it my turn? And just analyze it a little bit more so that next time you can start working on that at practice. And then when you come to the meet again, it's a little bit stronger and it doesn't happen again. But I think that if you talk to any athlete, they have those ups and downs. And the reason that people get to that elite level is because they're able to continuously pick themselves back up, learn from, those not so great moments and become even better down the road.
When you were young, your mom was a tennis player, if I know that right. And you probably thought you were going to be a tennis player or something, in something other than swimming, but you found out you had scoliosis. And so talk a little bit about that and that pivot in your sports career.
Yeah, for me, starting swimming was really a medical remedy. I was diagnosed with scoliosis, which is curvature of the spine, when I was about 6 years old. So my back was about 25 degrees off center. I was this close to having to have surgery. I had to wear a brace on the outside of my clothes, which I absolutely hated as a young kid. It was just like, oh no, I got to wear that thing around my classmates and things like that. And, sure enough, as I got into the water, both of my parents were athletes, so my mom wasn't necessarily pushing tennis, or my dad did crew. So, they weren't necessarily pushing that, but they definitely wanted to see me get involved at sports. So when the doctor recommended swimming as a medical remedy, they're like, yeah, let's try it. Let's see how it goes. I was born in San Juan, Puerto Rico, surrounded by water, and it felt like a great fit. And sure enough, by the end of, I didn't learn in some fancy pool. It was literally a guy's backyard. Our lane lines were literally just ropes, regular rope, and it was just trying to learn to get from one end of the pool to the other. By the end of that summer, I was like, Mom, I love this. I love going to a practice. I love meeting new friends. What else is next? And she's like, well, let's try competitive swimming. And that's how it all started. And, it's great. It was an avenue that it was unexpected. A doctor recommended that I get into swimming, and it kind of got me to a lifelong career that got me an Olympic medal.
I'll tell you what, we need to send a thank you note to that doctor who got you in the pool, because what a blessing you were to the U.S. team. But we talk about that iceberg, and one of your iceberg moments on the bottom side of the iceberg was not making the Olympic team the first time that you really thought you were going to make it. Like there were expectations of you making it, and then you didn't make it. And so talk a little bit about the disappointment. How do you come back from something like that, and just, your overall thoughts relative to what happened?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back a little bit further of like when I first started swimming. In Puerto Rico, it was very multicultural. Kids were from all different kinds of backgrounds. The minute our family moved to the US when I was about 9 years old, I immediately joined a team. And it was me, my family, and one other family that was African American. So I immediately knew that we were one of the few. Mm-hmm. So as my career started to excel, I had those parents that came up to me and said, what are you doing at the pool? Shouldn't you be doing like track and field or basketball or some of those like mainstream Black sports, right? Mm-hmm. So I had that pressure of, people chattering in my ear about like, why are you swimming? Because of the color of my skin. Throughout my entire career too, I also had, my dad was definitely someone who pushed me to my limit, but he also put a lot of pressure on me too. So I had a lot of parent pressure. Mm-hmm. If I didn't perform, or if I didn't get a gold medal or didn't do a best time, he would constantly question like, what are you doing in practice? Are you not training hard enough? What happened? You're letting yourself down. It's an embarrassment type of thing. And so, all that on top of, I love swimming. Like I just wanted to I saw the 96 Olympic Games and I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be an Olympian. So I worked 4 years to get to this point, to be able to go to Olympic trials and earn a spot on the team. Well, of course, as I mentioned earlier, I was one of the few Black girls on the swim team. Even as my career excelled, I was still one of the few Black girls that was going to nationals and making teams and things like that. So of course, heading into 2004, there was a media chatter about who was going to be the first Black woman to make a U.S. Olympic swim team. And, I had that pressure. I did a ton of interviews about that. But for me, my mindset had to be, let's make the Olympic team first, right? And focus on that. Unfortunately, all the pressures of me wanting to be an Olympian and just, this is my moment. It had to happen at this point. My dad pressuring me to make sure that I performed at my optimum at Olympic trials. The media coming at me with who's going to be the first Black woman to make Olympic team, like all those things. And layer on top of that, I still didn't have self-confidence in myself. Like I knew I was a good swimmer, but I would still hop up on the block and be like, okay, I wonder what she did for training. I wonder if she's ready, and it was all about everybody else but myself. So of course I went to 2000 Olympic trials. I was expected to make the Olympic team. Unfortunately, I did not. I walked in top 4 in the entire country in my event, and I walked out getting 34th in my best event. It's far from making the team, and the pressure of all that I had mentioned before came crashing down on me. I mean, it was devastating to not make the Olympic team, because it'd been my dream for the last 4 years to be an Olympian. The media was disappointed because I didn't make history, right? And then on top of that, my dad was extremely disappointed at me. You know, he came at me and said that I was a disappointment to the family, that I was an embarrassment. He couldn't believe that he had to go tell his friends that I didn't make the Olympic team, and all this negative chatter that continued to come my way, and it was overwhelming. Unfortunately, after 2000 trials, I went into severe depression. I definitely had some suicidal thoughts. But my biggest thing is that I had to go see somebody. And that's something that, a lot of people have this perception that if you feel like you need to go see a psychologist, there's something wrong with you. And that's not the case. For me, I held so much inside that to be able to see a psychologist was about getting it off my chest and getting that weight off my shoulders and kind of talking through things. Mm-hmm. So a disappointment in 2000 turned into, let's refocus for the next 4 years. My career wasn't over. I was, in 2000, gosh, this was so long ago, 20 years ago, 2000, I was a freshman in college. I had several more years ahead of me to train, and I really had to refocus with talking to my coaches. And, I had a very weird relationship with my dad after that whole, what he said to me in 2000. But I had my mom, who was extremely positive in my corner and always encouraging me. So we had a conversation. I had a conversation with myself of just like, okay, you're not training to please all those people, please the media, please your dad. Like, that's not what it's about. This is something that you want to do, that you found a passion for back when you were 6-7 years old, So refocusing after a major disappointment can definitely be challenging, but it also gives you a chance to kind of reset and look back at what, again, a negative situation is something positive. What did you do, the previous 4 years that you can do better this next 4 years? And for me, it was literally like, let's set some milestones. Let's get that, I kind of distanced myself from my dad. I learned how to talk to the media and kind of spin the angle of me being a swimmer trying to make the Olympic team versus just me being a black swimmer, and it was dealing with the negative chatter. I continued my entire swim career where people, had these microaggressions because I was one of the few black women on the pool deck. I heard it left and right. So it was about knocking that stuff out and just being focused on what I wanted to do, so that 4 more years later, I didn't let that happen again. I didn't have the disappointment. It was more, the effort was put in, the work was put in, and I was ready mentally and physically.
Your story probably resonates with a lot of kids who have certain expectations, either their parents put on them or their coaches put on them, or just somebody, maybe it's their peers or their friends and stuff. What do you talk to kids about when you hear that that they may be struggling with this, or there's some kids kind of carrying around a secret that may, from a mental health standpoint, that they're saying, I had those kind of same thoughts that Maritza just talked about. How do you talk to those kids about that?
I think first and foremost, it's about letting those kids know that they're not the only ones. There's definitely a lot of athletes out there that deal with a lot of pressures, that have a lot of negative chatter going on in their heads, and to understand that it's okay to get help, I think, is the next step, is just saying, if you need to go talk to somebody, go talk to your parents and say, hey, I want to see a psychologist. Or if you don't want to go through your parents, find somebody that's that safe person for you. It could be a coach, it could be a teacher, it could be a parent, a cousin, aunt, whoever, that can connect you to the right person. And I kind of want to say, have it be somebody that you're not necessarily closely connected with when you go talk to them. So I definitely think professional help is a huge plus, because they're able to kind of help you manage through what your mind is thinking and what you're going through, and how to refocus and reset, right? So I think that that's a big thing. And then the other part of it too is, I always encourage people to be great teammates, because for me, I kept everything to myself. It took me years to go realize that I needed to go see somebody, but I kept everything to myself beforehand. And the people, I still enjoyed going to the pool because my teammates were always so encouraging and so positive. So I always encourage people, if you're not going through something that's tough, another teammate may be going through something that's tough, and make sure that you keep that encouraging voice and be in their corner when you possibly can, instead of, being a bully or pushing them down. I think it's all about, let's be great teammates, let's do this team effort and be strong together, and I think that not only does that translate from being on a team, but it also translates in life. Like when you start a job, you're working together on a team to make the business better, or whatever avenue you go down, beyond your sport, it can translate into what you're doing in real life. So definitely always try to keep a positive mindset and know that it's okay to go get professional help.
You mentioned something kind of a little bit in passing, and I want to dig a little deeper into it, okay? You mentioned that you heard things around the pool, especially about being a person of color and given what's going on in the country in terms of race relations and things like that. Talk a little bit about that experience and how you handled it, and what advice you would give to some kids that maybe feel like they're experiencing the same thing.
Mm-hmm. I've given this example before. One of the ones that stand out the most to me, and I'll just kind of paint the picture. Okay. So, I was at a swim meet in North Carolina with my teammates. There was probably, I would say there's about 10 to 12 of us at that meet. So we went to the meet, heading back to our hotel room in Charlotte, North Carolina, and there was a Black convention going on. So in the lobby, there was a lot of, African Americans, having a good time, obviously. And I remember walking in with a few of my teammates, and one in particular was like rushing to get to the elevator. Like they were just like, come on, let's go. We got to go to the elevator. And I was just like, we just swam really hard. Like, let's take our time. There's no rush. And literally got up to the elevator and started hitting the button, trying to get the elevator to get open. So, the elevator comes, me and my teammates walk in, and that person turned around and was like, gosh, there's so many, and dropped the N-word. Wow. And to me, it was just like, they're complaining. Not only are they dropping the N-word, but they're also complaining about being in a room where there's people that look like me, and they're feeling uncomfortable. And I think that was, at the moment, I had no idea what to do. Like, I immediately froze. I couldn't believe that, number one, that word came out their mouth, and number two, that they felt so uncomfortable. It's like, welcome to my life. Like, I am a Black female in a predominantly white sport. You don't see me walking around feeling nervous or, anxious about anything. But at the same time, I didn't say anything. I sat in that elevator, and my teammates, the other teammates who also heard it, they didn't say anything either. It's unfortunate that situation happened, and it was just, I look back at it and I'm just like, wow, and I know that it happens often, unfortunately, and I think it still does happen where, certain people feel uncomfortable in a crowd of Black people, which is, surreal to me, but, it happens out there. And my biggest thing to people, not necessarily other Black athletes, but people in general, is to say, speak up. If you know that somebody is saying something that's not right or doing something that's not right, don't feel like you have to be silent. It's okay to say something and be there for somebody else. For me, as a Black swimmer, I definitely at that moment was at a loss for words, but I would have hoped that my teammates would have kind of been there to pick me up as well and just stand by me. And unfortunately, at that point, nobody felt comfortable doing that. So hopefully we're moving into an era where we're in this together. It's interesting. You talk about like all the social unrest that's going on right now and the protests and things like that. But you're not just seeing Black people that are protesting, you're seeing all walks of life protesting and standing up for what's right. And I think that that's it's very encouraging to see. You know, we're standing united together, and hopefully, you know, I don't think that things are going to change overnight by any means, but I think that people are now willing to listen and learn about our culture and understand what we've been through and try to figure out, like, how do we reduce it? We know we can't get rid of it completely because that's just life, but how do I do better? How do I react better? How do I, you know, bring positive action to any scenario that I may come across?
You know, that's a really good point, because, you know, in terms of being a positive athlete, as we like to say, you know, encouraging somebody else, having an optimistic attitude, and putting other people first, is that part of being a good teammate, though, is recognizing situations that like you went through, and for a good teammate should have stuck up for you, and hopefully, you know, hopefully in the future, that's something that kids will look at, hear this kind of story, and say, yeah, well, have I ever been in that situation, and maybe I should have done the same thing. I want to talk a little bit too about that whole idea of when did it ever stop being, or has it ever stopped being? I know, because I mean, I'm guilty of it. I just introduced you as the first Black female to be an Olympian, but you know, at that point of just being a great swimmer, you know, that you were a great swimmer and a great athlete and a good teammate. Are you comfortable with that? Does it help you, hurt you? Talk about that a little bit.
You know, I think that there's a part of me internally, right? I wanted to be an Olympian. That was the first and foremost, you know, goal of mine. So when I accomplished that, I knew there was another part of it. So I knew there was the barriers that I was going to be breaking, that I was going to become a trailblazer, that I was going to become a role model. And I made the decision to not walk away from that either. Like, I know that, you know, and I'll say two things. You know, first, I know that it's important to be a role model for the next generation coming up, and that's something that I wanted to do. I don't know that it's for everybody, so don't feel the pressure that you have to be, you know, a role model for everybody, but it's definitely a positive thing to do. And, you know, but at the same time, it's such a pivotal moment to be in a sport or to be in a scenario where you can encourage others who look like you to do big things as well, right? So, you know, I'm proud to be the first. I've always said that I'm proud to be the first, but I definitely don't want to be the last. First and foremost, I'm an Olympic swimmer, but I'm also a Black Olympic swimmer. I'm a first Black Olympic swimmer. So that's something that nobody will ever be able to take away from me, but something that I will continue to talk about forever. I think when I first made the team, you know, I did a couple of interviews here and there that talked about me being the first, but then it kind of died out a little bit. Like, it wasn't really a big deal, right? And for me personally, I knew it was a big deal, but I didn't make a big deal of it either, because I was just like, no, I'm just, you know, I'm you know, I kind of shy away from telling people I'm Olympian in the first place. I just kind of let them, like, ask a couple of questions, like, so did you swim? Yeah, I can swim. You know, and then, you know, sometimes you get the question of, like, well, did you swim in college? Yeah, I swam in college. It's pretty good. And then, you know, eventually the Olympic part comes out of it, but I'll never flat out say, hey, I'm an Olympic swimmer. But, you know, as the years kind of started going on, I actually got to work with Simone Manuel's swim coach. And for those of you who don't know, Simone Manuel is the first Black female to win an Olympic gold medal in an individual event. So I met her coach, and her coach was like, you know, I have Simone on my team. She is I think she's going to be a great swimmer. Like, I think she has it, but she really is struggling with knowing that there isn't somebody that looks like her in this sport, or there's very few that look like her in the sport. So that's how we got connected. And that was a moment that was eye-opening to me. You know, it does make a difference to be able to encourage others who look like you to be involved in a sport that ordinarily you wouldn't consider. And you also take it even a step further of, when I made the Olympic team in 2004, 70% of African American children didn't know how to swim. And I'm one of the few who made it at the Olympic level, but there's so many that don't even know how to swim. And I thought that was a major problem. So I took it a point to, I want to be a mentor and an idol for the young Black swimmers that are coming up, but like, how do we build that foundation to get more African Americans talking about swimming, considering swimming? Let's get more of us in the water and let's get more of us safe. So, fast forward 16 years later, now we're down to 64% of African American children don't know how to swim, which, a lot of people are like, that's only 6%, but that translates to millions of kids that now know how to swim that didn't know before. There's definitely work that needs to be done still. But now it's great to see that there's more of us. There's myself, there's Cullen Jones, there's Simone Manuel, there's Leah Neal, Reese Whitley, Giles Smith. I mean, I could keep going, and it's great because when I came out, it was just me. There was a few that were definitely trying, like you had Sabir Muhammad, Mike Norman, Tanika Jameson, Nika Mabry. You had that group. We all knew each other, and we were all trying to be the best athletes that we could possibly be. And I may have been the first one to break the barrier, but I definitely wanted to make sure that we all come together to inspire the next generation, because the more of us that they see, the more people will start to make swimming part of the conversation and get involved with it as a sport.
As you can see, Maritza is a great motivational speaker. Maritza, if somebody wanted to have you speak, if someone would like to follow you on social media, how do we get a chance to follow you? I could just call you and email you, but how can everybody else get in touch with you and hear more about what you have to say?
Yeah, you got the inside scoop. So if anybody wants to reach out to me, I do a lot of motivational speaking. I do dry clinics and water clinics and just in general motivational speaking, but you can always check me out at my website at MaritzaMcClendon.com. And of course, I'm on social media. I'm at Maritza McClendon 04 on Instagram. You can find me on Twitter, on Facebook. Feel free to reach out to me on there as well. You can get to me through my website or through social media. And then also too, I just want to encourage everybody listening to get to know athletes. We're all on social media and we all are real people. I swear we're real people. So get to know us, get to know some of the things that we do and pull little nuggets out that work for you and become the best athlete that you could possibly be. And don't forget to encourage the next generation to do the same.
Well, you've given them lots of nuggets today. We're so appreciative of you spending time with us and taking us through your life and being so honest and as I said at the start, just one of my favorite people. And so thanks, Maritza, for spending time, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, Scott. Thanks for having me.
What an incredible perspective by Maritza. We really appreciate her spending time with us today. If you would like to watch some of our previous video casts, they're all available on the video section of our website at positiveathlete.org. And if you're interested in reading inspirational stories of high school positive athletes, we'd love for you to check out our new book, The Positive Athlete, 100 Inspirational Stories of High School Student Athletes. One of the stories in the book is about Carissa Bonham, who is a mixed-race soccer athlete from Iowa, who for years struggled with her identity in life. You can read her story and 99 others by purchasing this book on our website, which again is positiveathlete.org. We'll see you next time on Lessons in Positivity.